I never thought Jake and I would end up not speaking, let alone yelling across our living room. Honestly, if you'd asked me back in college, I'd have laughed. Jake and I were practically inseparable. Not just friends, but the kind of duo everyone expected to still be hanging out decades later, complaining about work while binge-watching some ridiculous show. So when the silence stretched between us thick enough to cut through, it felt like the universe was playing a cruel joke. How do you go from sharing everything, the same crappy instant ramen brand, the last clean shirt, your dumb college dreams, to barely existing in the same space? I mean, we were living together, right? In this tiny second-floor apartment with peeling paint and that sagging couch we both swore we'd replace but never did. It was supposed to be fun, the great sophomore adventure. Instead, it turned into this cold battlefield where even the walls seemed tired of overhearing us. There's this betrayal that happened. I won't say what exactly, at least, not yet. But it hit like a surprise punch you don't see coming, the kind that leaves you questioning everything. Not just about Jake, but about what it even means to trust someone. The thing with betrayals is, they sneak in disguised as little things at first. A missed call here, a closed door there, until they grow into this massive canyon between two people. And suddenly, Jake, who was once my partner in crime, the guy who'd back me up no matter what, felt like someone I didn't recognize anymore. There were nights when I'd sit on the edge of that sagging couch staring at him across the room, wondering how we ended up here. How the best friend I thought I had became this figure who could twist a knife without even making a sound. You ever have that moment where you think the worst part about conflict is the actual fight? No, it's the quiet. The moments after the yelling stops but before anything gets fixed, or worse, when it never does. That silence is brutal. And in our apartment, it was deafening. So yeah, the question that kept gnawing at me was, what happened? What exactly drove us apart so sharply that living together felt less like sharing space and more like sharing suspicion? I wanted to understand it, to piece together where it all unraveled, because if I didn't, I'd be stuck questioning everything else about that year, that friendship, and maybe a bit of myself. Jake had been my best friend since, well, forever. We'd met on the first day of freshman year, bonding instantly over our mutual inability to find the cafeteria on time and our shared obsession with a band no one else seemed to get. So when sophomore year rolled around and the chance to move off campus with him popped up, it felt like a no-brainer. I mean, who better to share a cramped apartment with than your ride-or-die buddy? Our place was this modest two-bedroom on the edge of town, nothing fancy by any means. Sure, the paint peeled in a few spots and the kitchen faucet had a quirky drip that kept us awake more nights than I cared to admit, but it was ours. And for the first few weeks, it was exactly what I pictured. Late-night gaming marathons, loud music blasting while we tried to cook something that wasn't ramen, and endless laughter. Jake was still that guy who'd bail me out when I overslept for class or lend me his notes without an eye roll. Then there was Emma. She was this mutual friend of ours, sharp, funny, and honestly a little more than just a side character in our story. Jake had known her almost as long as I had, and the three of us had this easy rhythm, the kind that makes you think nothing could ever mess it up. Emma even came over pretty often, bringing her goofy energy to balance out whatever weird stress shot through our apartment. Or so I thought. But you know, living with someone every day isn't just about the good times. It's about the slow grind of noticing the little things. Jake's phone always vibrating softly, but he'd turn its screen down when I came near. Emma texting Jake with this smile on her face that felt a little too private, a tone in their conversation I wasn't part of. Stuff that, at first, felt like paranoia, or maybe just the normal stuff roommates have to deal with. Jake started changing, or maybe I just started seeing the cracks. Small shifts at first. He'd get defensive when I joked about cleaning the apartment, or brush off my questions about where he was going on weekends. He'd block his bedroom door, something that had never happened before, and I found myself hesitating before knocking. The easy camaraderie we had began to feel like walking on eggshells. There was this particular evening I remember, clear as day. We'd been sitting around, the three of us, watching some nonsense movie, when Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and when I caught a peek, I saw Emma's name pop up. But instead of grabbing the phone, he pocketed it. Right then, it hit me. Why all the secrecy? I tried to tell myself I was reading too much into it, but the more I thought about it, the more tangled the feelings got. Jealousy mixed with confusion, and suddenly, I wasn't sure where I stood in all this. Was Jake just pulling away? Was Emma part of it? Or was this all some weird game that I didn't even know I was playing? The tension between us started piling up like dishes in the sink. Ignored, stinky, and impossible to avoid forever. One night, it boiled over. I caught Jake in the kitchen heading out with some bags after a call that ended with him slamming the door softly behind him. Feeling frustrated, I confronted him. "That's not like you," I said, not hiding the edge in my voice. "Since when do you just disappear without a word?" He looked at me, and I swear in that moment, I saw something I hadn't before. Shame, maybe? Or just tiredness? Maybe I'm figuring things out. He muttered. Maybe you don't know everything. And yeah, that blew up faster than either of us expected. What started as a quiet jab turned into a heated exchange where old resentments came spilling out, turning our shared space from a home into a battleground. Harsh things were said. Things about loyalty, trust, and whether either of us was really the friend we thought we were. After that night, the apartment felt colder than the February wind howling outside, and I couldn't shake that gnawing feeling. Had the gears of our friendship already been grinding long before I realized it? Were those hidden calls with Emma just the tip of the iceberg? I was starting to see Jake as this other guy one I barely knew, hiding pieces of himself away. And that's when I found it. I wasn't even looking, to be honest. It almost tripped me up when I stumbled across something in his room he never expected me to find. It wasn't huge, but it was a sharp enough surprise to shift the balance between us. Suddenly, secrecy wasn't just on his side anymore. It was the currency by which we were trading suspicion. The apartment, once our sanctuary, had changed. The walls seemed to listen a little too closely now, the air thick with unspoken questions. I'd catch Jake's gaze across the room, cold and clipped, and wonder if this was really the end of the chapter or just the start of something messier. I didn't know then what I was going to do with this new knowledge, but one thing was clear. Whatever was happening between us wasn't just college drama. It was the slow, painful unraveling of something I thought would last a lifetime. And in that endless silence, I was left wondering if friendship could survive when the trust was gone. It started with those tiny things that, in hindsight, were like cracks in a windshield. Small, almost unnoticeable, but spreading fast enough to become impossible to ignore. Jake, who used to be that open book, suddenly became a locked diary, and every time I tried to peek in, it felt like I was stepping on landmines. I caught him at odd hours, texting away with that furtive glance over his shoulder, or shutting down when I asked a simple question about weekend plans. There was a distance creeping up, subtle but persistent, and I couldn't help but feel pushed out. The thing is, we all have moments where we close up a little, right? But with Jake, it was different. There was a kind of edge to it, a silent refusal to share that didn't just baffle me, it stung. And then there was Emma. She wasn't just a background character anymore. Our casual hangouts started feeling like something laced with tension. Jake and Emma would exchange these private looks, their texts buzzing a little too frequently, and suddenly I was the outsider in what used to be our trio. One night, I remember sitting on the cracked leather couch trying to focus on the movie playing on the TV, but my eyes kept flicking to Jake's phone buzzing on the coffee table. It was Emma's name once again. Instead of grabbing it, Jake just brushed it away like it was nothing. But to me, it was everything. The silent message that something was going on beneath the surface I wasn't invited to see. "Why don't you just answer her?" I blurted out, more frustrated than I meant. The room felt too small, the air thick with awkwardness. Jake shot me a look, sharp, unreadable. "It's none of your business," he said, his voice quieter than usual but carrying a weight that knocked the wind out of me. That moment, it felt like a firewall went up between us. I wanted to argue, to convince him that I was still part of this circle, but the words died in my throat. What I did instead was something I hated. I backed away. From there, it was like walking on a slippery slope covered in loose gravel. Little arguments broke out over stupid things, the way he left dishes piled up, the way he suddenly became an expert at ignoring me. I caught myself wondering if I was being paranoid or if the jealousy was just eating at me. Did Jake prefer Emma's company? Was that why he was becoming a ghost in our own apartment? Things came to a head one night when I walked in to find Jake packing a bag. No warning, no casual, "Hey, I'm heading out." Just the weight of his silence heavier than the luggage at his feet. "That's new," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He paused, eyes flickering with something raw. "Just going out for a bit," he said, but there was something broken in the way he said it, a crack in the armor I hadn't seen before. I took a step closer, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "Since when do you just disappear without telling anyone? What's going on with you?" Jake met my gaze, and for a second I thought he might say something real. Instead, he sighed, ran a hand through his hair, and said, "Maybe I'm figuring things out. Maybe you don't know everything about me." That line, "maybe you don't know everything," it sliced through the last bits of our shared history. We both knew it wasn't just about some late-night plans or secret texts. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface exploded then and there. Words flew, sharp and mean, in a way I hadn't expected from my best friend. We dredged up old wounds, poked at insecurities, and questioned loyalties. "You never cared about how much you'd changed," I shouted, voice cracking. "And you think I'm the only one?" Jake shot back. "Look in the mirror before you start throwing stones." The fight left us hollow, the apartment buzzing with an uneasy silence that felt even heavier than before. I retreated to my room that night, heart pounding, walls closing in like a vice. Days passed and everything felt off. The air was colder, the smiles forced or non-existent. Jake avoided me with the intensity of someone dodging landmines, and I was left wondering how many more of those small secrets were buried in this place we once called home. Then, I stumbled on something. Not on purpose, really. I was searching for a charger under Jake's bed when my hand accidentally brushed against an envelope hidden beneath the mattress. It was unassuming, plain, but when I pulled it out, my stomach sank. Inside were a series of messages and notes. Things Jake never wanted me to see, things that flipped the script entirely on whatever story I had been telling myself. Holding that envelope, the fragile trust between us shattered completely. It wasn't just the secret itself, it was the fact that it was hidden in my own home, under my nose. Suddenly, I wasn't just the confused friend. I was part of a silent game of cat and mouse neither of us knew how to win. I closed the envelope slowly, every fiber of what used to be friendship unraveling in my chest. The apartment felt even colder now, the silence heavier with unasked questions. From across the room, Jake's eyes met mine. There was no warmth there, only a guarded distance. And in that moment, I could only wonder if what we had was slipping away for good, or if somewhere beneath the rubble, something salvageable still remained. I remember standing there with the envelope clenched in my hand, feeling like the ground beneath me had shifted and nothing was quite what it seemed anymore. The discovery should have fueled more anger, more confrontation, but instead it cracked open something I didn't expect, a kind of reluctant understanding. I made a decision to talk to Jake, not as an enemy, not as someone ready to throw blame, but just as me, the guy who still remembered the guy Jake used to be, the friend who once carried my bad jokes without complaint. Or at least, I hoped he was still in there somewhere. The night I confronted him again, the air between us was thick. He wasn't looking for a fight either, which was both a relief and a weird twist. When I finally laid the envelope on the coffee table, the silence stretched out for a moment longer than felt comfortable. "You don't have to explain," I said, surprising even myself. "But I want to understand. Not just the stuff I found, but you. What's really been going on?" Jake looked at me like I'd lost my mind. And maybe I had in hoping for that peace. But there it was, no excuses, no harsh words, just something raw and real. He started talking, slowly, honestly, about struggles I never saw, about pressure with family, some mistakes made, and how he felt like he couldn't be himself around me or Emma anymore. The secret was less of a betrayal and more like a symptom of stuff he was wrestling with alone. Reading those messages and notes out of context made it feel like he was hiding something sinister, but hearing it straight from the source made it human, messy, flawed, but real. It wasn't a clean fix. There were no grand apologies, no dramatic reunions. Just two guys, tired and bruised in their own ways, trying to figure out if the pieces could fit back together. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. We didn't solve it all, but the walls, those cold, silent walls, felt like they softened a little bit. Living with Jake didn't suddenly become easy again, and some distance stayed, but it stopped feeling like a war zone. I learned that friendship isn't about flawless trust or perfect timing. It's about holding on even when the bond frays, sometimes burning slower but steady nonetheless. Looking back, I'm not sure if all wounds heal completely or if some just settle into scars you learn to live with. Reminders of where things almost fell apart, but didn't quite. What I do know is that forgiveness isn't always a clear yes or no. Sometimes it's messy, awkward, and maybe even a little selfish. Maybe that's okay. In the end, I wonder if Jake and I ever really went back to being those inseparable college kids, or if that version of us faded into something else entirely, more complicated, a little rough around the edges, but maybe stronger for it. So, I guess the real question is, when your best friend becomes your worst enemy, what does it take to find your way back? Is it even possible to move forward without forgetting what broke you in the first place? I'm still figuring that out, one quiet moment at a time.